Penguin Random House Audio presents Tales of Two Planets, Stories of Climate Change and Inequality in a Divided World. Edited by John Freeman. Read for you by Paul Boehmer, David Desantos, Peter Ganim, Almarie Guerra, Kim Mai Guest, Deepti Gupta, Dominic Hoffman, Sonya Macari, Sunil Malhotra, Jorjeana Marie, Bahni Turpin, and Roy Vongtama. This is John Freeman. Introduction. This is John Freeman. It's 109 degrees in Paris as I type this. Outside, on Place Saint-Sulpice, a half-naked man washes himself in the great marble fountain. The sun has baked the limestone buildings around him, a blinding shade of white. He takes his time, soaping his body, soaking his neck, his shins, his damp head. Not far away, a group of men sprawl on the ground. They look like they've been dropped from the sky. One wears only his underwear. No one else is around. The roaring splash of water is the only noise. It's 3 p.m. and it will remain this temperature well into evening, by which point 5 people across the city will have died. The complete name of the fountain at Saint-Sulpice is actually Fontaine des Quatre Points Cardinaux, which means the fountain of the 4 cardinal directions, since the structure faces north, south, east, and west. It was designed by the Italian architect Louis Visconti at the behest of Claude Philippe Barthelot, Comte de Rambuteau, prefect of the Department of the Seine. Rambuteau's mission as prefect was, quote, water, air, shade, and his plans for delivering them to Paris residents were as ambitious as his name was elaborate. During Rambuteau's tenure, which began in the 1830s following a devastating cholera epidemic, an explosion of public works began. Destruction came with creation in equal measure. Boulevards were widened, slashing through ancient and never-to-be-recovered city lanes. But sewers were modernized and over 100 miles of water mains laid down. Rambuteau planted trees along avenues, installed pissoirs so men weren't urinating in the street, and most startlingly, in a city where drinking and bathing water was taken from public fountains, he built more than 1,700 small fountains so that the large, decorative ones didn't have to serve as water sources. La Fontaine des Quatre Points Cardinaux was completed in 1848. It stands today, nearly 200 years later, in part because Rambuteau imagined that an apparently impossible problem could be solved. How could a city that had become a terrible breeding ground for disease, a city that occasionally burned and seethed with fire, a city ruled arbitrarily by a king no less, be transformed into a place of water, air, and shade? Paris provides all 3 things to many, though not all, of its visitors today. Rambuteau's success was enabled by another architect, though, a far less famous urban planner, Charles-Axel Guillemot. A few decades before Rambuteau began the city's building spree, Paris was sinking. All of the mines and quarries that had been dug in the city for centuries, going all the way back to the Roman era when the city was called Lutetia, had honeycombed its underground structure. In the 1770s, sinkholes began to develop across the city. Whole buildings and street corners would suddenly, violently collapse into the dark, cavernous space beneath the city's streets, killing pedestrians and raising a public alarm that perhaps Paris was built on borrowed time. In 1774, a quarter-mile trench opened up one day on what is now part of Boulevard Saint-Michel, swallowing horses, houses, people, to a depth of 85 feet. Perhaps all the rock and stone that had gone into creating Paris would be the source of its demise. Guillermo, who was born in Sweden to French parents, was not a notable architect until he began what would become his life's work, rebuilding the city under the city of Paris. As Graham Robb beautifully describes in his book Parisians, Guillermo possessed the imagination to see what had actually happened. Quote, as the city spread from the island to both banks, the quarries deepened and Paris began to devour its foundations. End quote. For 3 decades, Guillermo set about quietly in the dark completing the largest architectural project in Europe, shoring up the city's entire foundation and mapping it upon the city streets to a scale so grand that when Paris's cemeteries ruptured, his vast halls and reconstructed galleries were capacious enough to also absorb the 1 million-plus bodies of the city's dead. Today, they are simply called the catacombs. Attempting to solve the problems created by what had been extracted from the earth. It sounds like a very modern problem. We face a similar calamity in the making all across the world today. For 2 centuries, by taking and taking from the earth, we have rendered our ability to live here an open question. Burning fossil fuels has heated the planet. How much and how fast the temperature rises is a matter of debate. That it's happening and why is not. 99% of scientists believe that this warming has been caused by human activity. We call this development climate change, a term that doesn't describe the violence of what has been happening. Earthquakes, fires, floods, die-offs of species, sinkholes, tornadoes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. Instead of acting on this enormous problem, as Ramboteau did many years ago with drastic action, we, especially those of us in the global north, have dithered, argued, denied, and waited. We've waited for record heat waves to break, for the forest fires to burn out, for the floods to abate, for migrants to stop leaving parched countries and turning up at borders throughout the world. We've been waiting for ice shelves to cease their melting, for the droughts to end, as if all the signs of catastrophic climate change might be magically weighted into submission. While governments and our own individual wills have faltered, these events have only grown in size, frequency, and destructive power. The future, so often predicted by climatologists, is here, and yet large numbers of the world's most powerful residents cannot grasp what it means. To turn away from the greatest threat humankind has ever faced has required a staggering dedication to distraction and lack of empathy for the suffering of others. Evidence of what's happening to the planet is everywhere one looks. The facts have been checked and rechecked, and benchmarks of acceleration routinely surpassed. Rather than deal with what these forces are telling us, much of the world, especially the global north, has retreated. Many of the richest countries have elected nationalist leaders who campaigned on us versus them platforms and who are at war with the power of facts. They are often in the pocket of fossil fuel companies. Many of them are triumphantly xenophobic, flagrantly demonizing anyone who travels from elsewhere in search of a better life. These leaders know something so blatantly true that it's about the only aspect of climate change that is not debated. This crisis has been affecting the world at different rates. Right now is a great time to live in Brittany. It's not such a good time to be in Bangladesh, or Chad, or Burundi, or Thailand, or the Sahel. Climate change is affecting us all, but it's going to hit the poorest parts of the globe first and hardest.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?